Hello, my friends. John Lee Dumas here, and welcome to the complete-ish history of MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy has been on quite the journey since 1989, and the goal of this video is to take you on the journey of where MicroStrategy was in 1989 going forward, its major shift that it made in 2020, what's been happening the last 4 years, what's going on right now in the present, and then, of course, what is potentially going to be happening in the future. A lot of exciting times ahead, my friends. But remember, in this video, nothing is financial advice. Consult a financial advisor before making any financial decisions. This is just for your entertainment. Some opinions are on here, which I'll be getting to in a second, and giving a lot of credit where credit is due. But first and foremost, who am I? My name is John Lee Dumas. I was born and raised in the state of Maine, and I went to college on an Army scholarship. I spent 8 years as an officer in the U.S. Army, tried a bunch of things after the Army, like law school, corporate finance, commercial real estate. And then in 2012, I launched the first and still only daily podcast interviewing the world's most successful entrepreneurs, which you can see right there on the screen, Entrepreneurs on Fire. We have over 4,500 episodes to date, and I interview an amazing entrepreneur every single day, 7 days a week, talking about their story, strategies, tactics, successes, failures, and the like. Then I decided to launch MicroStrategy Today, which is the only daily show that's talking about MicroStrategy's updates, news, intel, all those things, literally 7 days a week. I've been loving doing this show, getting a lot of great response. So check out the channel if you want MicroStrategy Today. It's been a lot of fun. I want to make sure that I'm giving full credit where credit is due. So please take a good look at the screen right now, because this investment thesis for MicroStrategy, which was created by Chris Millis, man, I relied heavily on this document in creating this complete-ish history of MicroStrategy. You can see who he relied on, all these great individuals and their Twitter handles there, their X handles. Chris is the person that put this investment thesis together. A lot of people, helped him out with that, which he mentioned there. I want to give full credit to all these individuals that you're seeing here, because this could not have been done alone. Everybody is standing upon the shoulders of giants. I am definitely standing on the giants of these individuals. So please check them out, because they are always putting out amazing stuff about MicroStrategy. Now I'm going to jump off video, because we're going to focus on the complete-ish history of MicroStrategy. That ish is just because we're not trying to go overly cumbersome, not trying to overburden you with information. This is just meant to be a great way for you to get to know the company MicroStrategy more, Michael Saylor more. And by the way, if you're already on Team MicroStrategy, use this as an opportunity and as a tool to share to family, to friends, to loved ones, to those that need to learn more about MicroStrategy, because of the amazing journey that they are on and that we as shareholders are on with them as well. In my opinion, the sky is bright, and let's dive in to the complete-ish history of MicroStrategy. All right, my friends, let's dive into this presentation, and starting with a quick explanation of MicroStrategy. They are an analytics software company transitioning into a Bitcoin Treasury company, BTC, that buys and holds Bitcoin as a reserve asset and leverages it to grow corporate value. So the complete-ish history of MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor. Michael Saylor co-founded MicroStrategy back in 1989. In the 90s, MicroStrategy experienced rapid growth with its innovative approach to business intelligence software. The company went public back in 1998. It was benefiting from that dot-com boom. Its stock soared, and Saylor became known for his ambitious vision for a digital future. However, the early 2000s brought significant challenges. In 2000, the company faced a financial restatement crisis that led to a sharp decline in its stock price and legal troubles. This period marked a significant setback for MicroStrategy and Saylor, but it was also a turning point. The company refocused its business strategy, which eventually stabilized its operations and finances. Over the next 2 decades, Saylor steered MicroStrategy through the evolving landscape of technology with a focus on business intelligence, mobile software, and cloud services. The company made significant investments in R&D and acquisitions to bolster its product offerings and market position. So Michael Saylor, and you'll be seeing a lot of very fun photos throughout this presentation, because I'm looking to keep this spicy, my friends. So Michael Saylor founded MicroStrategy back in 1989, and he steered that company through this fast evolving technological landscape. This is for the past 25 plus years. His decision in 2020 to acquire as much Bitcoin as intelligently possible has resulted in very positive return to his shareholders to date. The future is uncertain, but to those who believe in Michael Saylor's vision, the future is very bright indeed. MicroStrategy Today. In 2020, Michael Saylor had a decision to make regarding the future of MicroStrategy. Throughout the remainder of this presentation, I'm actually going to analyze his and MicroStrategy's decision and how it appears to be working out. We're going to look at opportunities. We'll look at the risks. I will share information that I think is relevant for those wanting to better understand MicroStrategy. And none of this information is meant to be financial advice. Please consult a financial professional before making any financial decisions. Do your own research, my friends. Let's meet the team. This is the team that's on MicroStrategy. There's actually been a couple amazing additions as of late, but we won't get into that right now. But this is the team as the time of this recording. The financials and the KPIs, the key performance indicators. MicroStrategy is the largest corporate holder of Bitcoin and has increased its Bitcoin per share by over 12.5% a year for the past 2 years. And we'll be diving a lot into this Bitcoin per share, the Bitcoin yield, and what all of that means coming up in this presentation for sure. What are some opportunities? Well, let's be honest, a visionary leader with skin in the game. That is Michael Saylor. Monopolizing digital capital. That is what MicroStrategy is doing. They are monopolizing the digital capital known as Bitcoin. Financial leverage flywheel. We'll be getting a lot into flywheels later in this presentation. The new FASB rules adoption. It actually was locked in on 12/15/24, and it's going to be official for MicroStrategy in 2025. It's going to allow MicroStrategy to report its Bitcoin holdings at fair value. This is going to be amazing for a lot of reasons. We'll dive into a lot of those. Future S&P 500 and current NASDAQ index inclusion will accelerate and strengthen the Bitcoin flywheel, and is poised to become the Amazon of fixed income by becoming a Bitcoin bank. Now, again, we're going to be going into more detail on all of these things coming up. What are some risks? Listen, there's no opportunity if there's no risks. So there's definitely risks involved. If you find a risk-free opportunity, then that is no opportunity, because if it's risk-free, then everybody's already done it. So there are risks. Counterparty risk. What happens if something happens to Michael Saylor? And this is something we'll talk about later with Keyman. What happens if somehow the Bitcoin gets compromised where it's being stored in multi-sig and cold storage, et cetera. So there is counterparty risk. There's leverage risk. MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor are using, in their words, intelligent leverage to maximize their Bitcoin holdings. But let's be honest, there is some risk to leverage. There always is. But we're going to talk about exactly the leverage that MicroStrategy has, and it's so much less than most people think. Executive Order 6102. I'll be getting into details about this. It has to do with gold. But again, this is just a little light touch right now that we're going through these risks. We'll be diving into them much deeper later in this presentation. And then just worldwide black swan events. We never know what we don't know. Black swan events can happen. They have happened in the past. They will very likely happen in the future. And black swan events affect everything. And of course, that includes MicroStrategy. So what's the conclusion? Through its ability to intelligently leverage capital markets, MicroStrategy provides a way for investors to significantly outperform alternative Bitcoin investment vehicles. Additional tailwinds that are likely to accelerate MicroStrategy's growth include imminent adoption of the new FASB rules in 2025 and potential inclusion to future indexes like the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100, which has already happened. That is locked and loaded. If you believe in the Bitcoin thesis, MicroStrategy provides an opportunity to learn how they plan to become the Bitcoin Treasury company of the world and how they have built a moat around their company that will not likely be breached for decades to come. The decision. Dun, dun, dun. In 2020, when COVID hit, Michael Saylor had a decision to make: die a slow death, die a fast death, or reinvent MicroStrategy. Hint, he chose number 3, the accumulation. In August of 2020, MicroStrategy purchased 21,554 Bitcoin for around $250 million. By September of 22, MicroStrategy had acquired 130,000 Bitcoin. The bear market ensued, and MicroStrategy kept buying. I'll be buying the top forever, says Michael Saylor. As of December 17th, 2024, MicroStrategy holds 430,000 Bitcoin, with more accumulation coming. This number will absolutely be different when you're watching this presentation, because Michael Saylor is always buying Bitcoin at the top. Here's a Saylor tracker. This is a great tool to use at saylortracker.com. It just shows the ups and downs of Bitcoin. Definitely a roller coaster. And then it shows the purchases that Michael Saylor has made. As you can see over at the end of this tracker, there's a lot of green dots clustered because Michael Saylor has gone into overdrive, my friends. Methods of accumulation. Well, he does ATM, which is selling shares at the market. That is a tool that he uses, which is, by the way, in this case, accretive, adding value to shareholders, not dilutive, which it is for all other companies that do this, that sell shares at the market. We'll get into more details about this later. And what does he do with it? He buys Bitcoin, and then he issues convertible debt. And by the way, this is like the most popular convertible debt in the world currently. And what does he do when he issues convertible debt? He buys Bitcoin. And then what does he do? He rinses and repeats. And the result is an increase in Bitcoin yield for every single shareholder. And again, if you're not understanding some of these things, like the Bitcoin yield, I go into deep discussion about this and explanation about this. And I even bring some Michael Saylor clips into this later in this presentation to really drive this point home. So common questions from outsiders. So people that don't know much about MicroStrategy, they might say, but selling shares is dilutive, right? Well, the answer is not when you immediately buy Bitcoin, it's accretive. Shouldn't I just buy Bitcoin? Well, yes, you probably should buy Bitcoin in my personal opinion, but MicroStrategy is a leverage play on Bitcoin, is becoming the Bitcoin treasury of the world. If that excites you, if you believe in that vision, if you see the use and the value of that, then MicroStrategy is an interesting play. But I don't understand MicroStrategy. Well, that's fine. Just keep watching, my friends, because Michael Saylor and these great images are going to keep coming your way. Michael Saylor says, I want to own dominant technology monopolies that everybody needs, nobody understands, and are unstoppable. Congratulations, Michael Saylor. I personally believe you are on your way. Let's talk about the business model. Leverage capital markets to borrow fixed, low-cost, long-term debt to increase Bitcoin per share. That is the business model. Michael Saylor leverages capital markets to borrow fixed, low-cost, long-term debt to increase Bitcoin per share. And by the way, if you've been following this recently, this is not even low cost. It's been no cost, 0% debt, which, who knows what the future may bring, but that's what he's been doing recently. MicroStrategy is a Bitcoin monopoly that many believe will become the Amazon of fixed income. And if you believe that too, before, during, or after this presentation, it's exciting indeed. Okay, this is something that I want to share. This is, to me, the two slides that really just turned the light bulb on for me when it came to what MicroStrategy was doing. I'm going to give a very quick and basic explanation of the next two slides that we're going to be looking at. But then I'm actually going to be playing a video where Michael Saylor explains it in a lot more depth. But I think if you hear it from me in a very concise, compact manner, and then watch the Michael Saylor clip, that it'll be helpful. That's just my opinion. So here we go. So what Michael Saylor did, and this is on his Q3 of 2024 earnings call, he said, look at what exactly is crude oil? Crude oil is energy. It's essentially energy. And it's a $10 trillion asset class. Now, crude oil alone, just crude oil, it's not very useful in the crude oil form. So what happens? And that's in the middle part right here, this oil refining operations, these three words in yellow. You have oil refining operations, and what do? They refine the petrochemicals, they extract and transport, they do sales and distribution, and then they prospect and drill to do what? To find more crude oil. So the refining operations, these oil refining operations, they are so key of taking crude oil out of the ground in most cases and actually making something with it. And what are they making? Look at the far right in the green. Jet fuel, gasoline, diesel, petroleum gas, heating oil, fuel oil, asphalt. These things are actually useful. This is what you use every day when you drive your car, when you heat your house, all these different things. When you're driving on the road, the asphalt. So the oil refining operations are absolutely critical in taking crude oil from a very low to no use case and making it unbelievably necessary and useful and valuable in all of these things. And then, again, he's going to go through this in more detail, but like the more refined all the way up to jet fuel, to the less refined all the way down to asphalt. And he's going to compare and contrast how he's doing that with Bitcoin. So moving on to the next slide. Now, here's the example of MicroStrategy and Bitcoin. So here you have on the left the macro economy. Crypto. There's crypto. What is crypto? It is capital preservation and productivity. Very powerful. But alone, what really is it? Is capital preservation and productivity. Very important. It's great. Bitcoin is amazing in my opinion. Then look at the middle. MicroStrategy Treasury operations. So what does MicroStrategy do? They act like a refinery, just like the oil refineries do those valuable actions. MicroStrategy performs these valuable actions. They issue securities, they adjust the leverage, they fund dividends, and then, of course, they acquire Bitcoin. And so they're acquiring Bitcoin just like the oil refineries are acquiring crude oil. They're issuing securities, they're adjusting the leverage, and they're giving fund dividends. So if you go over to the right, what is that providing from the top to the bottom? Well, now because MicroStrategy exists, because they are the MicroStrategy treasury operation of Bitcoin, this essentially oil refinery of Bitcoin, there's options that are 5 to 10x leverage. There's 3x leverage, these two funds called MSTX and MSTU. Then there's the equity of MicroStrategy. This is the equity that I am personally an investor in. I'm a shareholder in MicroStrategy, which is around a 1.5 to 2x leverage play on Bitcoin. And again, you can just do the straight spot BTC ETFs. So if you want to just have an exact one-to-one match of Bitcoin, the spot Bitcoin ETFs are there for you. But then MicroStrategy jumps in again, and they do converts, and they do dividends, and they do fixed. And again, Michael Saylor is going to describe a lot more of this in the video that I'm about to share. But I just wanted to go through these two slides just to give you an opportunity to kind of hear my determination of this and how this just really flipped on a light switch for me when it came to how valuable MicroStrategies is today and on how unbelievably valuable I believe they're going to be in the future. So without any further ado, Michael Saylor, take it away.
There's a lot of confusion in the market. I mean, MicroStrategy is misunderstood. It's a little bit underestimated. I think the company is undervalued. And it starts from this observation that MicroStrategy is just a holding company that has some Bitcoin on its balance sheet that trades at a premium. And somehow, people that are short the company, they want to work through this logic of maybe the company's just worth its net asset value and a little bit of a premium. But that's kind of like saying a bank is only worth its net, its book value of its capital, or maybe, Apple Computer, 98.5% of Apple is based on forward expectations of the business, and only 1.5% is based upon the liquid assets of the company. So most companies are valued based upon their operations and their reserves. And so if we think about MicroStrategy as a Bitcoin treasury company, what are we doing? Well, we are plugged into the macro economy. The macro economy is being driven by technology, by inflation, by entropy, by chaos. And that macro economy drives the crypto economy. The crypto economy trades 24/7, 365, and people, move around all the crypto assets, and they also trade back and forth Bitcoin, and that's what makes it very volatile. That's why you can sell $1 billion of it on Saturday night. That's why you can buy $1 billion of it on Sunday morning, right? That the crypto economy or the crypto exchanges plugged into Bitcoin, they are picking up the vibrations and the sentiments and the positive and negative developments of the macro economy. Now, why do people go to Bitcoin? Capital preservation and productivity. And of course, they will continue to do that. And that's a $1.4 trillion asset class. Now, Bitcoin is a commodity. It's a digital commodity. MicroStrategy taps into that digital commodity with our treasury operations. And one thing we do is acquire Bitcoin. We acquire the Bitcoin, we custody the Bitcoin, and we do that on behalf of our investors, because many of them either can't or choose not to hold Bitcoin and custody the Bitcoin. We also issue securities like our equity, and like our convertible bonds. And we adjust our leverage from time to time. We leverage up, we deleverage, we if we have something like this $500 million 28 note that's expensive, we repay it, we replace it with cheaper leverage. So we're always doing that. And in the future, if necessary, we'll fund dividends and any other payments necessary to our security holders. Now, that's the operational business. That business is made possible by our Bitcoin reserves. We have 252,220 Bitcoin. What's special? It's permanent capital. It can't be called, it's not overnight deposits. We can lean on the capital, we can leverage it. We know that we can take out a 4-year debt instrument and know that we'll have the capital in 4 years. And then the person that's buying the security knows we have the capital. So our reserves establish the creditworthiness of the company. What else do they do? Well, we create leverage with our reserves, by mixing fixed income and equity together. Whenever we sell equity at a premium to the underlying net asset value, we create leverage. Whenever we sell debt, we create leverage. If we sell convertible or create conversion rights at a large premium, we create leverage. As the duration of our instruments stretches out, we create leverage. So our reserves have some intelligent leverage in them. They're worth about $18 billion right now. We are the largest holder of permanent Bitcoin capital. Now, what can we do with it? Well, if we look to the right side, the market wants to buy securities. So, for example, one security they really like that everybody understands is a spot Bitcoin ETF, IBIT, FBTC, et cetera. There's like 42 of them right now. There are going to be spot ETFs in every country on earth. They meet compliance requirements, custody requirements, and they provide you with 1x leverage. If Bitcoin doubles, you'll mostly double. If Bitcoin is cut in half, you'll probably lose half, your capital. They charge you fees of 20, 25 basis points. They are kind of like the institutional banks and the business. They're trust companies, and they take overnight deposits. And they're very limited in what they can do. You give them $1 million, they can buy Bitcoin. You ask for the $1 million back, they give you the $1 million back. That's what they do. They don't have permanent deposits. They can't hold your money for a decade. They have very, very simple daily redemption windows. And so they never trade at a premium. They won't trade at a discount. And that means that they look pretty much like Bitcoin. Their volatility looks like Bitcoin. If Bitcoin's 50 vol, they'll be 50 vol. Their performance will look like Bitcoin. If Bitcoin is 50 ARR, they'll look like 50 ARR. It's a great product for people that want to buy the spot commodity and they want it in a wrapper as a security. And I have no doubt, in time, it'll be very common that people use this instrument. That's a direct connection. Now, if you think about MicroStrategy, MicroStrategy offers something slightly less risky, less volatile than that. That's my MSTR convert. When we sell a convertible bond, if the price of Bitcoin is 70,000, and if we were to sell the convertible bond, or say when the price of Bitcoin, in fact, by definition, every single convertible bond we've ever sold was at the high of Bitcoin, right? We're selling convertible bonds at the market. People are either buying the Bitcoin or they're buying the bond. And if you wanted Bitcoin long exposure, you buy the bond, you get a conversion right to our stock. And then if Bitcoin trades down by 50%, you'll be able to put the bond back or you'll get redeemed at par. So those converts are part of our fixed income strategy. They give you some portion of Bitcoin performance because they have that MSTR conversion right. Now, we don't really know, exactly how they will perform against Bitcoin. I just showed you in the past, we've outperformed Bitcoin with the converts, but I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what it'll do in the future, but common sense says that if we sell a convertible bond at a 40 or 50% premium to our stock, then when Bitcoin doubles and doubles again, then you're getting, you're getting a decent fraction of the Bitcoin performance, and maybe you'll get more, maybe you'll get slightly less, but you're getting it in a bond instrument. That's in the market right now, and that creates a lot of leverage. And one of the results is MSTR equity outperforms Bitcoin. That's a 1.5x or more. Historically, we're almost 2x leverage, but I mean, it changes every day. Our goal, right, with the equity is use intelligent leverage to outperform Bitcoin. And the way that we outperform is, on the upside, we have to have some leverage on the downside. And what we're doing is we're stripping the volatility, stripping the risk, stripping some of the performance out of the fixed income instrument, and then that benefit accrues to the equity holder. And so you see MicroStrategy straddling both sides of the spot market. Now, because we straddle both sides, that MSTR equity that trades, 1.5 times the performance of Bitcoin, it happens to be 1.5 is volatile. So if Bitcoin's 50 vol, we're 75 or 80 vol. If Bitcoin's 50 ARR, we might be 75 or 80 ARR, right? So who wants that? Well, the derivative traders want it. So if you look at these derivatives like MSTX and MSTU, in a matter of weeks, they raised more than $1 billion of capital by offering the proposition of 2 times MSTR. But if you think about my chart, what they're really offering is if MSTR is 1.5, they're offering 3. If we're 2x, they're offering 4. So they're offering leverage to people that want that leverage, and they're long Bitcoin investors. I showed you how MicroStrategy has a large options market. Well, there are a lot of people that want 5x or 10x leverage, and the best way to get it, in their view, is a high volatility equity with deep liquidity. And I showed you how MicroStrategy is very liquid in the spot and very volatile. And so if you're volatile and you're liquid, then the only other question is, are you credible? Are you trustworthy or transparent? What are we going to do? And then the thing about MicroStrategy is every day for the past 4 years, we've said one thing: Bitcoin, long Bitcoin, we're going to acquire Bitcoin. So if you're a trader and you're trying to figure out what's MicroStrategy's strategy, you don't have to worry we're going to hedge. You don't have to worry we're going to trade against you. We're long Bitcoin. We're going to be 1.5x Bitcoin. And that means you can create MSTX or MSTU. That means you can create MSTY. It means you can create an options market. It means that if you want to short Bitcoin, then we're giving you extra juice to short it. If you want to go long, we go that way. And so you can see, of course, those 3 securities above the baseline offer high volatility, high leverage, and they're built on a Bitcoin Treasury company that has a large pool of permanent capital and has an adept Treasury operation. If we look below the baseline, we've announced that we're going to pursue a target of $21 billion in fixed income capital raise. Well, so convertible bonds are an obvious thing for us to do. We also look at other types of fixed income, and in the future, we could imagine preferred stocks that might be compelling to people that want some of the performance of Bitcoin, but they want downside protection. Some people would like a convertible preferred. Others might want a dividend of some sort. And then there's always the market for just providing fixed income, just a straight fixed coupon. If Bitcoin, I've said before, Bitcoin returns 50% ARR, but there's a large portion of the world that would be happy if we stripped away 80% of the performance, 90% or 95% of the volatility, a lot of the risk. And if we stripped away risk and volatility and performance and we gave them a coupon that was compelling and an instrument that they felt good about the credit of, if they understood the balance sheet, then we would be providing a useful product to the market, based upon a digital commodity. Everybody knows they want income. Everybody knows they want, appreciation. Everybody would like to have it with varying degrees of risk and volatility. MicroStrategy's treasury operations are to we assess the capital market, we figure out what the capital markets want. We figure out what's the best way. What is the security we might issue that's beneficial to all our other stakeholders? And of course, that changes from time to time. And we don't have any specific plan today. And so you'll just have to stay tuned. But this chart helps you understand that MicroStrategy is the sum of its Bitcoin reserves and its treasury operations, and they go hand in hand in a very complementary, synergistic fashion. Sharish, next slide. I wanted to show this chart because a lot of people have said, well, so what are you really doing? Is there historical precedent for this? And the answer is yes. If you think about the energy industry, if you think about Standard Oil or oil refining companies, what is an oil refining company doing? It is starting with a commodity, crude oil that has a lot of energy in it. Bitcoin has a lot of energy in it. Bitcoin is crude capital. Standard Oil discovered crude oil. Um, the demand for that, and the market is driven by technology. The supply is a function of technology, entropy, chaos, inflation, and they want that energy because they want power, or they want mobility, or they want to drive human progress. And those oil companies are a $10 trillion asset class. So it's a big market. It's a global market. It's based on a commodity. Now, what do oil companies do? Well, they have oil reserves. They have proven reserves and unproven reserves. You would never value an oil company just on their reserves. It's like, oh, well, they're just, 50% or they're 1.5 times their reserves. Well, the answer is, what else are they doing? Well, they have an oil refining operation. So what does an oil company do? I mean, it refines the petrochemicals into products that are either more refined or less refined. So if you ranked the top 7 products that come from the crude oil commodity, the most refined is jet fuel. You're going to put it in your jet, fly across the Atlantic. It's pretty important. You'll pay a lot of money for jet fuel. Gasoline is the next most refined. Diesel is another product. Liquefied petroleum gas, LPG, is another product. Then heating oil, then fuel oil, and then you get down to asphalt. We put it on the street. Now, none of these users can use the crude oil. You can't put crude oil in your car engine. You can't put crude oil, down on the pavement for a highway. You can't put crude oil in your Boeing jet. So it's pretty obvious why you need an oil refining operation. And what does the company do? Well, it refines the petrochemicals, it prospects and drills, it extracts, it transports, and it manages the sales and distribution. And what is the company worth? It's worth the combination of those two things, right? And you have to figure out how valuable each of the two things are. But you are adding value to the crude oil when you refine it and purify it. When we create securities from Bitcoin, we're adding value. We're creating something which someone with a large pool of capital finds very compelling. They can't put the commodity in their engine, right? They just can't. They need the security, and we give it to them in a refined format, and that's worth a lot of money to them. And because of that, there oftentimes is what I'll call a BTC spread. There's a difference between the value of that security to the investor and the amount of Bitcoin in that security. And so in that particular case, if the BTC spread is 50%, then we sell $100 million of a security backed by 50 million of Bitcoin, and we capture $50 million in a BTC gain. And that is the value that we create for our shareholders. That BTC gain is reflected in the BTC yield that we show you.
Well, there you have it, my friends. Michael Saylor at his finest. I hope that that clip gave you the type of light bulb moment that I had when I watched through that. Maybe the second or third time that I went through that, it really clicked for me. So maybe, that would be a recommendation. Go back, watch that one or two times. If you're close, but you're still not quite there, I have a few epic Sailor clips coming up as well. So don't miss those, because I want to dive into the next question, which is there a moat? Like, is there protection around MicroStrategy as a company? Well, let's talk about the brand recognition. MicroStrategy is known as the Bitcoin treasury company of the world. They have so much more Bitcoin on their balance sheet in their reserves than any other company in the world. And it's hard to imagine a company catching up. Culture, Michael Saylor is the culture. He is the person that has created this culture of laser eye focus. What do? We buy Bitcoin. We hold Bitcoin. We buy Bitcoin. We hold Bitcoin. We grow our Bitcoin stack. We increase the Bitcoin yield for our shareholders. Cult, I mean, listen, there's a lot of excited people. I don't like the word cult that much personally, but there's a lot of excited people when it comes to MicroStrategy. I mean, I do a daily show called MicroStrategy Today. That means the first thing every morning when I wake up, I'm spending over an hour to 2 hours, sometimes even 3 hours, putting together a video about MicroStrategy because I'm that passionate about the company. First mover advantage, they had that first mover advantage. They were the first company to do this with conviction, and they still are, and they have such a lead. It's not getting caught, my friends. The flywheel, I'm not going to spend too much time here because we're going to really be getting into some flywheels coming up. Monopoly, well, it's kind of starting off that way. We'll see where it goes because other companies are slowly starting to wake up. Optionality, there's just a lot of options, so to speak, like actual options. And the visionary. Michael Saylor is such a visionary. He's created a bunch of visionaries within his company, MicroStrategy. And so I did share that we're going to get into this flywheel, the MicroStrategy flywheel specifically. So let's dive a little deeper into this. What do? They raise capital. They use that capital to increase Bitcoin holdings. They take the Bitcoin price appreciation, which leads to increased value of their Bitcoin holdings. The increased value of the Bitcoin holdings leads to increased MicroStrategy stock price. The increased MicroStrategy stock price leads to increased capacity to raise capital, and then they repeat. My friends, this is the definition of a flywheel. I'm going to run through it really quickly one more time because you can just see how it feeds off of itself. They raise capital. They use capital to increase Bitcoin holdings. Bitcoin price appreciation leads to increased value of Bitcoin holdings. The increased value of the Bitcoin holdings leads to increased MicroStrategy stock price. The increased MicroStrategy stock price leads to increased capacity to raise capital. And then they repeat. And they're doing this over and over again. And if you look at SailorTracker.com, they're doing this faster and faster and bigger and bigger. So let's talk about the index flywheel, the indexes. The more passive flows it attracts from indexes, the higher the share price. The higher the share price, the more capital it can raise. The more capital it can raise, the more Bitcoin it can buy. The more the price of Bitcoin increases, the bigger its market cap. The bigger its market cap, the bigger the weighting in indexes. And the bigger the weighting in indexes, the more passive flows it attracts. If you know the NASDAQ 100, if you know the QQQ, then you realize that Apple, NVIDIA, Google, these companies get massive passive inflows into their stock every single day because they have like 6, 7, 8, 9% of the overall index. And so even them going from like an 8% to a 9% increase in the overall percentage of what they're getting from the QQQ because of their size is a massive amount of money that's just adding to that inflow. So as MicroStrategy increases its market share and increases its market valuation and increases its stock price, it's going to get more money as it moves up that chart from, the 50s to the 40s to the 30s to the 20s to the 10s. And then look out, Magnificent Seven. Let's go. Let's go. Okay, let's talk about MicroStrategy as the next digital monopoly. Amazon monopolized digital commerce. Congratulations, you're Magnificent Seven. Apple monopolized digital services. Congratulations, Magnificent Seven. Google monopolized digital information. Congratulations, Magnificent Seven. Facebook monopolized digital relationships. Netflix monopolized digital entertainment. Spotify monopolized digital music. MicroStrategy is monopolizing digital capital. Period. End of story. They have a lead that cannot be caught. They have a moat that cannot be breached, in my opinion. These next couple slides, they're a little intense. So let me just kind of warn you about that. These are deeper mental models. These are just deeper thoughts to think about when it comes to MicroStrategy. MicroStrategy is the Amazon of fixed income. The same way that Amazon became the go-to for consumer products at scale is the same way that MicroStrategy is becoming the go-to for financial products at scale. MicroStrategy is the Standard Oil of Bitcoin. I love how he goes through those slides that we went through earlier, really breaking this down. And to me, this is what made things really clear. The same way that Rockefeller standardized crude oil as an energy resource, MicroStrategy is standardizing Bitcoin as a financial resource. The same way Standard Oil redefined the energy industry, MicroStrategy is redefining the financial industry. Okay, a little deeper mental models. Next step. MicroStrategy is the McDonald's of digital property. Think about it. The same way that McDonald's acquires and leverages physical real estate is the same way that MicroStrategy acquires and leverages digital real estate. MicroStrategy is a transformer. MicroStrategy is a transformer that converts Bitcoin volatility into tailored risk reward profiles to suit the unique goals of different baskets of investors. MicroStrategy is leading the digital transformation of energy. MicroStrategy is leading the digital transformation of energy by capturing low frequency energy from the analog world and transmuting it into high frequency energy in the digital world. MicroStrategy captures low frequency analog energy, fiat, that is decreasing in value and transmutes it into high frequency digital energy, Bitcoin, that is increasing in value. MicroStrategy is the next digital monopoly. Amazon monopolized digital commerce. Apple monopolized digital devices. Google monopolized digital information. Facebook monopolized digital relationships. Netflix monopolized digital entertainment. Spotify monopolized digital music. MicroStrategy is monopolizing digital capital. We went through these things before, but I mean, it's just important to hear these things, to see these things again, because you're seeing what MicroStrategy is doing. MicroStrategy is the new hurdle rate. MicroStrategy is the new minimum rate of return that investors must consider when evaluating alternative investment opportunities, because MicroStrategy has shown where the bar is. MicroStrategy is securitizing Bitcoin. It's securitizing Bitcoin by creating financial products that allow investors to gain indirect exposure to the asset without directly purchasing, holding, or managing the asset itself. Boom. MicroStrategy is the bridge between TradFi and Bitcoin. MicroStrategy is capturing capital that either won't, because it's volatile, or can't, because it's forbidden, otherwise be deployed into Bitcoin. This capital is then converted into Bitcoin, removing supply forever. MicroStrategy is the most efficient and effective alternative vehicle for capital that is either restricted because of regulations or reluctant because of volatility to flow directly in Bitcoin. By providing indirect exposure to Bitcoin through various products, MicroStrategy attracts capital that otherwise wouldn't be invested in the asset. It transforms it into Bitcoin and removes the respective supply forever. Whew. Those are some deep mental models. Keep going. MicroStrategy is the bridge to a Bitcoin standard. MicroStrategy is spearheading the global shift to a Bitcoin standard, paving the way for widespread adoption and guiding the transition. MicroStrategy is wrapped Bitcoin. MicroStrategy acts like wrapped Bitcoin for traditional finance, providing investors with indirect exposure to the asset through its stock without having to buy it directly. Investors can customize their exposure based on their risk tolerance and return goals. MicroStrategy is both long global carry and short global carry. MicroStrategy is the only trade in the world that is both short global carry and long global carry. MicroStrategy benefits from both buying Bitcoin during times of loose monetary conditions, long global carry, and holding Bitcoin during times of tight monetary conditions, short global carry. Consequently, it's able to profit from two seemingly opposing financial strategies at once. Boom. Volatility is a feature, not a bug. This is a Michael Saylor quote that I keep coming back to because it's so true. And MicroStrategy profits from volatility to the upside and to the downside. MicroStrategy issues convertible bonds to raise cash, which it then uses to buy Bitcoin. These bonds are attractive because they offer investors consistent interest payments, as well as the potential to convert them into MicroStrategy shares, which are then tethered to Bitcoin's performance. And by the way, a lot of his recent offerings have had no interest, but they're still unbelievably appealing, so much so that he more than doubled his last issuance after it went out because of demand. By doing this, MicroStrategy effectively sells volatility while investors benefit from Bitcoin's potential upside through the bonds conversion feature, as well as the downside protection. MicroStrategy benefits from the capital raised to increase its Bitcoin holdings. Boom. MicroStrategy benefits from both moves up and moves down. This is the volatility factor. It's the only stock where shareholders can celebrate and benefit both moves up and down in price. When the price moves up, shareholders benefit from increased value of MicroStrategy's Bitcoin holdings, increasing share price. When price moves down, shareholders benefit from equity MicroStrategy can issue at lower prices to buy more Bitcoin, increasing Bitcoin per share. Now, what's Bitcoin per share? I'm going to be diving into this a little bit with Michael Saylor's help, by the way. The yield, the Bitcoin per share, the BTC yield over the past 4 years, that's 21, 22, 23, and 24. You can see those numbers: 47%, 1.8, 7.3, 17.8. MicroStrategy aims for a 6 to 10% increase in Bitcoin yield every year. That number may move to the upside on the next earnings report. We will see. Bitcoin per share is defined as the percentage change period to period between Bitcoin holdings and assumed diluted shares outstanding. Very important to take that in. So now I want to have Michael Saylor describe the Bitcoin yield that he delivers to MicroStrategy equity holders. This is about a 7-minute clip. Enjoy.
We're really excited to increase, our targets for BTC yield. We took them up by 2% from 4 to 8 to 6 to 10. But, you know, um, here is, I think, where it's appropriate for me just to make a few comments, right? Like, as I said, I think our company's misunderstood, and I also think it's undervalued. Investors have been concerned, about a lot of things. They've been concerned about our ability to raise more capital via equity and debt issuance. I think, as you can see from our performance so far and the 21-21 plan, those concerns are unfounded. There's no reason that we have to stop issuing fixed income instruments. We're not encumbered by any EBITDA covenants or any particular other cash flow covenants that'll keep us from doing that. And as you could see, some people have asked, can you keep doing ATMs? And I think we put that to rest by filing a $21 billion ATM. We're going to expand, and we're going to accelerate our treasury operations and our capital raising activities, based upon the performance you've seen, and with our newfound insights. We just keep getting we get new insights every single quarter in this market, and we're learning. But as we learn, we get a bit more sophisticated in how we do this. Now, I'm going to wade into the big premium debate here. Like, what's the appropriate premium for net asset against net asset value of MicroStrategy? And I just want to make one obvious point. We're a growth company. We're a Bitcoin treasury company, and we are growing. We are built on an asset, Bitcoin, which is growing 50% a year. And we are growing with that asset. If you review the market for common multiples of growth companies, if you had a 20% growth company, oftentimes they're valued at 25 times 40, 25 to 40 P to E. If you have a 30% growth company, oftentimes they're valued at 35 to 55 P to E. If you have a 40% growth company, they're valued at 45 to 70 sometimes. And a company growing 50% is oftentimes valued at 60 to 100x. And of course, Bitcoin's growing 50%. We don't know what it'll do in the future, but my personal long-term view is over 21 years, Bitcoin's going to grow 29% ARR. And looking backward, it's definitely been growing fast, 50% every year for 4 years. So, how do you think about the value of the BTC, the Bitcoin Treasury operations, right? Not the balance sheet, not the reserves, but what's the operation worth? And if you expect 30 to 50% growth for Bitcoin, then it's not unreasonable to have a 30 to 50x multiple for that growth. And a 30x to 50x multiple means if you were to look at this 6 to 10% target, 30 times 10 is a 300% premium to net asset value. 50 times 10 is a 500% premium. So you're talking about an operation that's 3 to 5 net asset value. And if you tack on the actual treasury, you know, you go from there and you realize you're talking about an enterprise that could be 80 to $100 billion. And you could establish it just by looking at this and realizing it. These are not UST bills that we're holding on our balance sheet. If you had a US Treasury bill that was growing 0% a year, you would multiply it times 20 in order to get a right multiple. But Bitcoin's growing more than 0% a year, so 20x is probably conservative. So that's one way to approach it. Another way to approach it is just look at the BTC gain, and that is what's really happening here. When we have a 5% BTC yield in the quarter, that's the same as acquiring 12,500 Bitcoin for our shareholders without dilution. That's like 50,000 Bitcoin on an annualized basis. That's like a $3.6 billion annualized BTC gain. If you had a $3.6 billion annualized gain and you put a 30 to 50 multiple on it, you've all of a sudden got an operation that's got a $108 billion to $180 billion value. And then you tack on the other 18 billion for the Bitcoin and you see where you get. It's like the operation 6 to 10 times net asset value plus the reserves. And so most of the market doesn't understand it. And most of the debate has been this assumption that we're somehow some holding company that just got lucky and occasionally sells some equity and we're not adding any value to the market. But hopefully, if you look at these numbers I've shown you, you realize that the value we're adding to the market is to create high performance, high volatility securities for one group of investors and do that based on our unique structure, and provide low volatility, lower performance, lower risk securities for another set of investors. And in that regard, we are the leader. Nobody else has $18 billion of permanent capital. In order to create a company like ours, you're going to have to actually go 100% all Bitcoin, and how do you do that at our scale? If you do it with a big tech company, they'll never be 100% Bitcoin because they got too much other stuff in their enterprise. And if you do it with a billion-dollar company, they're not going to catch us because, as you could see, we're not slowing down. We're going to target $10 billion of capital next year. So unless you're going to target $42 billion of capital in the next 3 years, then MicroStrategy is kind of in a unique position. So if you start thinking about it like that, and I'll just leave one other thought with you, which is and again, like I don't have a crystal ball, there's risk in all of this, but you understand our 21-21 plan. If we achieve our 21-21 plan, if Bitcoin grows in excess of 21%, if that happens, MicroStrategy is capable of BTC gains in excess of $10 billion a year within 4 years. And so thinking about a business like that that's growing more than 20%, starts to put in perspective that, yeah, we shouldn't just be valued based on our Bitcoin reserves. The real issue is, what are the opportunities for us as a Bitcoin treasury company?
So there you have it, my friends. Michael Saylor talking Bitcoin yield, KPI, long-term targets, those key performance indicators. And I just love seeing these numbers going up as he continues to overperform what he is looking to do on a month-to-month basis. Let's keep moving on now, and we're going to talk a little Michael Saylor quotes. Our objective is to find ways to generate incremental Bitcoin for our shareholders and do that with either cash flow from the business or do it through intelligent, accretive financing of equity or debt or other intelligent operations. Also, if you just buy the Bitcoin, you can't generate yield. True story. What is MicroStrategy evolving into? Where is Michael Saylor surfing off to? MicroStrategy is transitioning from an analytics software company into a Bitcoin treasury company that buys and holds Bitcoin as a primary reserve asset and leverages Bitcoin to preserve and grow corporate value. Now let's talk MicroStrategy versus alternative Bitcoin investment vehicles. Compared to spot ETFs, futures ETFs, and miners, as well as even Bitcoin itself. You can see where MicroStrategy just overperforms in all these first areas of largest corporate holder, downside protection, financial leverage, generating yield, no fees, accretive dilution, international gateway, deep liquidity, Bitcoin bank potential, and index inclusion. Of course, it does not have the four things that Bitcoin has, which is 24/7 trading, self-sovereignty, no counterparty risk, and seizure resistance. But a lot of positives from MicroStrategy. Let's talk about the 10 benefits of MicroStrategy. Speaking of, the largest corporate holder of Bitcoin is MicroStrategy. It holds more Bitcoin than any other public company and currently is 10x more than its closest rival. There's not even a close second place, my friends. There is no second best. There is no rival. The moat around MicroStrategy is real. Downside protection, MicroStrategy outperforms ETFs and Bitcoin futures both on up days and down days. Generated yield, MicroStrategy generates yield by leveraging cheap debt to increase its Bitcoin holdings. Financial leverage, MicroStrategy uses debt to acquire Bitcoin. The more the price of Bitcoin increases, the more capital the company can raise to buy more Bitcoin and further increase its Bitcoin per share, creating that flywheel effect that we've been talking about. No fees. MicroStrategy provides a way for investors to gain indirect exposure to Bitcoin without paying management fees. Accretive dilution. MicroStrategy is actively increasing its Bitcoin per share (BPS) by issuing shares to buy Bitcoin. As referenced in 2024, the company has increased its Bitcoin per share by 17%. And that number actually continues to grow. It's larger as we speak. International gateway. MicroStrategy offers global investors indirect access to Bitcoin, enabling those who might otherwise face barriers to invest or allowing them to do so in a more tax efficient manner. Deep liquidity. MicroStrategy stock is highly liquid, making it easier for large investors to buy and sell without significantly impacting the price. Bitcoin bank potential. As the largest corporate holder of Bitcoin, MicroStrategy is positioned to become a Bitcoin bank by offering financial services like loans, custody, and investment products backed by Bitcoin. Index inclusion. The more indexes that MicroStrategy is added to, the more passive investment flows it attracts. The bigger its market cap, the more capital it can raise, and the more Bitcoin it can purchase, creating that flywheel effect that we love. One key thing to note, owning shares of MicroStrategy does not entitle you to the Bitcoin that the company holds. Now, there are 10 Bitcoin principles that Michael Saylor goes through. I love it. I'm just going to let him take it away here. The 10 Bitcoin principles of MicroStrategy. Michael, take it away.
If you're a MicroStrategy shareholder, you're coming with us on this journey, and hopefully you see that we're in this for the long term, and we want to be as transparent and consistent and reliable and understandable as we can possibly be to you. So these are our Bitcoin Treasury Company BTC principles. One, we are going to buy and hold Bitcoin indefinitely, exclusively, securely, right? The company is built on this idea. If you're waiting for us to hedge, to sell it, to get out on top, if you're looking for us to diversify, go elsewhere, right? If you're a banker pitching me the idea of buying a value stock, buy some other cash cow company with my stock so that I can get them on the Bitcoin standard, my answer is, what are you going to offer me that's better than 29% ARR, risk-free for the next 21 years, right? We are focused on Bitcoin long term, right? Long, hot time horizon. So that's the number one principle. It's very important. Everything else is built on it. Number two principle, We're going to prioritize MicroStrategy common stock shareholders for long term, and we're going to prioritize long-term value creation. If you own MSTR, you're my partner. You and I are in it together. When I meet with the MSTR shareholders, we talk about their ideas. They say you should do an ATM. Well, how much leverage should we take on? What should we be willing to do or not do? How do you feel about this? Right. And their interests are my interests. They are the management team's interests. And if there's any question in your mind, like, what do you want to own for maximum performance over the next decade or 20 years? Right. The way we keep score is MSTR performance. Number 3, treat all investors with respect, consistency, and transparency. Note, every investor is our respected counterparty. If you've got a call option on MicroStrategy that expires in 30 days, I respect you. I'm glad you do business with us. We appreciate the support, right? But we're not going to run the business in order to maximize the call option on day 29. If the call option expires out of the money, I'm sorry, I couldn't do anything about that. We're going to optimize for the long-term common stock, because otherwise nobody can do anything else. All of the other securities above and below the common stock wouldn't work. So, if you want to short us, have at it. I respect that too. By all means, more the merrier, because you short $1 billion, you're going to buy $1 billion when we need you to buy it. And so it's fine. But of course, don't make the mistake of thinking that I'm going to serve your interests either. Right? Our interests are to make sure that we make good on our obligations. If we make a promise, we will meet our promise, to our creditors, to everybody else. And that just means be consistent, be transparent, be respectful. I want people to know they can trust us to do what we said we're going to do. I expect that we will have lots of different types of investors with lots of different strategies. In fact, there's already a almost infinite number of strategies: long, short, hedged, people trading vol, people selling vol, people levering up. It's like it's impossible to figure them out. Just be clear that we're going to think about 1 and 2, and then I don't try to outthink the quants with the Bloomberg. I know they are smarter and faster, and they have an opinion. Let them do what they're going to do. All I want to say is we're going to do our best not to compete with you. We're going to let you do your thing. We're going to respect you, and whatever we say we're going to do, we're going to do. 4, structure MSTR to outperform BTC. No offense to BTC. I love BTC. I tweet about BTC every day of my life. But MicroStrategy stock is going to be intelligently levered, and our goal is to be more than BTC, more volatile, higher performance. I'd be happy if we're 1.5. If you told me we were 2, I'm like pleasantly surprised, and I love it. But we can't guarantee what that number will be. We can't even guarantee we will. But what I can tell you is our principle is we will structure the business so rationally. Everything we've done is with the aim of MicroStrategy being like a 1.5x BTC. We want a comfortable, responsible boost so that we can support everybody else in the market. Number 5, we're going to acquire BTC continually. We're going to keep stacking. And the way that we're going to stack is while pursuing positive BTC yield. Look, we could sell the stock, at a negative premium and add BTC, but it would be dilutive to the shareholders. There are a lot of times when we could raise capital and it's actually quite accretive, but it's not but we don't like the spreads, and it looks worse than we think they'll be like next week. And so we'll just hold out and wait. because we want to support the market and we just don't think it's appropriate. Uh, so we have the ability to move aggressively when the opportunity presents itself, and we have the ability to wait and do nothing when that's the right thing to do. But the tr- you can invest in 500 other companies, and 500 other companies can make 10,000 capital investments. And after they make them, you can talk to the management team and try to figure out, was that building profitable? Was that acquisition profitable? Should we have done that with shareholder money? Was that a good idea or not? And to tell you the truth, you could write 100,000 pages on that, and sometimes you never really know. And I think the thing that's special about MicroStrategy, which is really nice, is we're giving you the true north, BTC yield. We're telling you every time we look at a deal, somebody calls me and says, "Hey, you should do this and this," and I calculate the BTC yield, and I say, "Well, that's not the most compelling option. Our shareholders won't respect me. We will publish it. We will be transparent." And so BTC yield really simplifies things a lot. It's like I said, you want to make the investment in 5 days, and you want to know whether it was accretive for your shareholders. And then if you're really honest and truthful and transparent, you tell them. And that's what we do. We're very proud of the fact that we tell you exactly what we're going to do, and we'll report on ourselves. And some quarters are better BTC yield than others. Some deals have a greater BTC yield than others. And so understand it, and we're going to be pursuing it, because at the end of the day, we generate BTC yield, we generate BTC gain, we put value in the Bitcoin operation. And that's the motor that drives the common stock, and it drives Bitcoin. Our sixth principle is we're going to grow rapidly, but responsibly. And of course, we're going to do it subject to market dynamics. The market changes every week, sometimes every day. We're paying attention. I can't tell you what we're going to do, because the thing that makes sense when the market is in one dynamic state all of a sudden doesn't make sense, 3 days later. But what you can be sure is we're going to pursue growth, and we're going to do it in a responsible fashion. Our seventh principle, we're going to issue innovative fixed income securities that are backed by Bitcoin. Right? I just showed you those convertible bonds. That's a great secret, but it's pretty extraordinary. How do you buy Bitcoin with less volatility, less risk, and get Bitcoin returns? Pretty neat idea. There are other good ideas. There are other ideas that we think will appeal to people in the capital markets. Some of them will appeal to Bitcoin investors. Some will appeal to crypto enthusiasts. Some will appeal to conventional investors. We're gonna stay in our lane. Our lane is we have a Bitcoin Treasury reserve, and it's permanent capital, and that means that we can find innovative fixed income ideas. Why do I single out fixed income? Because fixed income is what creates the most leverage that drives MSTR common. And when we do fixed income correctly, we're going to generate that 1.5x or 2x Bitcoin return. And that makes everybody happy. And that leads me to 8, right? If you're going to do 7, you got to think 8. 8 is maintain a healthy, robust, pristine balance sheet. Now, people are going to say, well, what does pristine mean? Well, it means transparent. It means homogeneous. There is one risk you take when you invest in MicroStrategy. There's a risk you take when you buy our fixed income securities. The obvious overarching risk is you take Bitcoin risk, right? You're accepting the risk that Bitcoin itself could fail. And if you're not willing to accept a Bitcoin existential systemic risk, then you probably shouldn't, own any of our securities, right? Because we're a Bitcoin company. But once you've accepted Bitcoin risk, there's a lot of people in the world, a lot of investors, they'll say to me, Mike, I love Bitcoin. I believe in Bitcoin. I just can't stand the volatility. Or I believe in Bitcoin, but I need like a guaranteed, coupon. Or I believe in Bitcoin, but I can't be marking this to market in my strategy, or my strategy doesn't let me do this. So there are a lot of people that will accept that. But after that, they want to know that we're going to execute responsibly. So that means we want a straightforward balance sheet. We want you to understand it. It's very, very straightforward. These are our assets. These are our liquid assets, right? We don't want to have complications. The reason we wanted to repay the $500 million senior bond, too many complications, too many caveats, too many restrictions, and what we've learned over the 4 years is when we have complications in the balance sheet, like the Silvergate loan or like this 28 senior note, those things undermine our ability to serve our common stock shareholders, and they undermine our ability to issue converts, and they undermine our ability to serve Bitcoin and to do the right thing for the capital market. So we are enthusiastic, but we're also very disciplined, and we know that we need to be viewed as having a pristine balance sheet in the Bitcoin business, in the Bitcoin treasury business. And so that's why we value that. And then 9, and I'll end with this. We're going to promote global adoption of BTC as a treasury reserve asset. Promote it to countries, promote it to cities, promote it to states, promote it to companies, to public companies, promote it to private companies. I I speak with public company executives. I speak with private company executives. We sponsor Bitcoin for corporations. Our belief is that Bitcoin is a solution to the problem that 95% of public companies have, and I guess 99% of private companies have, which is they don't have healthy balance sheets. Bitcoin fixes the balance sheet. It'll bring your stock back to life. It'll bring your options back to life. It'll bring volatility. Everybody is negatively polarized to capital. We want to flip the switch and positively polarize them to capital. So unlike a lot of industries where you don't want competitors, in our business, we're happy to share the playbook. We're happy to advocate. We'll show you how to do it. Everybody can win. There are no losers on the Bitcoin standard. There are only varying degrees of winners.
I mean, how can you not be excited when you hear Michael Saylor break things down like this? I just get so fired up when I get to hear him go through these principles. I've watched this multiple times. I mean, I just want to be behind a company that talks like this, that walks a walk like this. It just fires me up. Now, let's talk about Bitcoin versus MicroStrategy. First, you become orange pilled. You have to understand Bitcoin. You have to love Bitcoin. You've read the Bitcoin standard. You get it. You believe in it. And then you become red pilled. MicroStrategy is red. That's their colors. And once you really understand Bitcoin, man, you really understand at a deep level what MicroStrategy is doing. And it is exciting stuff, my friends. You become red pilled and you understand just how valuable of a company Michael Saylor is building with MicroStrategy and his plan. Because Bitcoin is for people on defense, MicroStrategy is for people on offense. One Bitcoin equals one Bitcoin. And if you're optimizing for self sovereignty, there's no second best to Bitcoin. If you're optimizing for ROI, there's no second best to MicroStrategy. Bitcoin stores wealth. MicroStrategy multiplies it. Bitcoin is for the risk averse. MicroStrategy is for the risk seeking. Bitcoin locks wealth. MicroStrategy unlocks wealth. So, some interesting things to think about there. There's 4 capital levers I want to talk about, and I put the word currently because the reality is this. Michael Saylor is going to create more levers, and I'm really excited to see what he creates. Number 1 is traditional debt, borrowing at fixed interest rates. Number 2 is convertible debt, issuing debt that can be converted into shares. Number 3 is equity issuance, selling new shares. And number 4 is at the market, ATM offerings, selling shares directly into the market. This is accretive, not dilutive. Michael Saylor getting numbers, going crazy with his chalkboard here. He says, I don't have any problem seeing how we could raise 100 billion more capital and then 200 billion after that. And I don't see any problem with that either, Michael. I'm just going to have to agree with you there. Now, how MicroStrategy's convertible notes work, let's kind of get some details here. MicroStrategy's convertible notes are debt instruments that allow creditors to earn interest while retaining the option to convert the debt into company stock at a predetermined price. If the stock price rises, creditors have the option to convert the notes into equity for potential gains. Otherwise, MicroStrategy repays the debt at maturity. It's important to note that the conversion removes the liability from MicroStrategy's balance sheet. Since MicroStrategy attempts to maintain a target of 25% leverage on the value of its Bitcoin holdings, each time a convertible note is converted, their leverage falls below the 25% target, which therefore prompts them to enter the capital markets again. Convertible bonds. The bond market is desperate for positive yield due to persistently low rates and inflation eroding real returns, leaving investors with limited options. MicroStrategy is an escape route. The more bonds MicroStrategy issues, the bigger it becomes, the greater its credit quality, and the better conditions that it can secure. This is all while MicroStrategy is actively contributing to the maturity of Bitcoin as an asset. The higher the conversion price for a given convertible bond offering, the more accretive the dilution. Let's talk about MicroStrategy benefiting from volatility. The volatility in the MicroStrategy share price is beneficial for two reasons. Number one, the volatility to the upside benefits them because existing convertible bonds have the opportunity to convert equity. And number two, the volatility to the downside benefits them because they can issue new convertible bonds at lower conversion prices. And I love how Michael Saylor says volatility, my friends, is a feature, not a bug. Zero coupon and negative coupon convertible bonds. MicroStrategy has the potential to leverage both zero coupon and negative coupon bonds. A zero coupon bond pays no interest but is issued at a discount, repaying full at maturity. A negative coupon bond requires the investor to pay interest, effectively reducing the bond's repayment amount. And right now, MicroStrategy is issuing zero coupon bonds all day long. And because they're in such demand, they might be issuing negative coupon bonds shortly. They already might be by the time you're watching this, which means that they're getting paid for issuing these bonds. Both zero coupon and negative coupon bonds appeal to investors who prioritize potential stock gains through conversion rather than earning regular interest payments. MicroStrategy performance of convertible bonds since issuance. I'm going to show you a video where Michael Saylor goes through this, but man, I mean, just look at these numbers: 25, 27, 28, 30, 31, 32. Look at these returns. The blended convert of all these combined is 90%. The return of Bitcoin is 47%. This is amazing how much higher these bonds have for a return than actually Bitcoin themselves. I think you can start to see why they're in such high demand. I mean, it's absolutely insane. So let's turn it back over to Michael Saylor and let him take it away.
Now, here's another slide that no one's ever seen before in one of our presentations. Many of you know about MSTR stock. And, what I've said is, oh, MSTR stock, it's beaten the S&P 500. And now some of you know about options. MSTR options are more traded, pound for pound than anything else in the S&P 500. And so you know that we are the volatility winner. You know that we're liquidity winner. You know we're the performance winner. What you might not know is that MicroStrategy has sold 6 convertible bonds, and if you had bought any of them, you're up 224%, 86%, 67%, 90%, 41%, or 54%. They've all been successful. They've been some of the most successful bonds ever sold to the convertible bond market. They're extraordinary in that regard, but here's the real extraordinary aha. How do you buy Bitcoin at the all-time high, get the upside of Bitcoin, and get your principal protection and get the downside protected? How do you strip the volatility and the risk off of the investment and keep the performance? You can't do that with an ETF. You can't do it with a straight equity that's 100% upside, 100% downside. But if you look at the chart on the right, and this is it just blew me away when I saw it. You realize Bitcoin has delivered 47% performance since those bonds were sold, and our bonds delivered 90% performance. And what that means is if you had bought $1 million of Bitcoin on the day we sold the 25 convert, or $1 million of the convert, or if you just across all of these, if you bought $1 million of each of them, In the convert, you would have got a 90% return. And if you had bought $1 million of Bitcoin, you would have got a 47% return. So not only do you get the return of Bitcoin, you also get the downside protection. And in this particular case, I'm kind of delighted to say we outperformed Bitcoin not with our equity, we outperformed Bitcoin with our bonds. Now, people they struggle with what is MicroStrategy's unique advantage in the market. What justifies the market capitalization of the company? Well, one very obvious thing is we are the primary, perhaps the major creator of or issuer of Bitcoin backed bonds in the world. And we're able to do these at scale. And we've got the credibility to issue them. We've got the know how to issue them. And we have the permanent capital. We have the $18 billion of permanent Bitcoin, and we have the large equity market cap that provides the floor that provides the credit for a bond buyer. And yet, you couldn't really reproduce this performance if you took $300 billion of cash in treasury bills and you sold these convertible bonds. Well, you could guarantee that the buyer of the bond gets their money back, but you wouldn't be able to beat Bitcoin performance. You would be lucky to be able to beat the US Treasury performance. And so if you're going to issue Bitcoin backed bonds or convertible bonds like this, you need to be 100% Bitcoin, and it needs to be permanent capital. You need to know that you've got it and no one's going to call it away from you. So, MicroStrategy's got a very exciting business here. This is right now the best understood part of our fixed income strategy, and it's not the only thing we can do. But what you can see is that we have very successfully executed this strategy to the benefit of the bondholders and of course, also to the benefit of the equity holders.
There's Michael Saylor breaking it down for us again. I just love how he does that. And let's talk about the minimal liquidation risk. MicroStrategy's long-term debt structure minimizes liquidation risk by using fixed-term, low-interest, long-term debt, including convertible bonds and senior secured notes with maturity dates years into the future. This gives the company ample time to service its debt and manage inevitable market fluctuations because there will be market fluctuations. The low leverage ratio. MicroStrategy attempts to maintain a leverage ratio of 25%, similar to a homeowner who only finances 25% of a house's value, which is considered low risk. MicroStrategy's model is highly flexible, giving them options to adjust for market conditions while maximizing shareholder value and Bitcoin exposure without excessive risk. Low leverage ratio. Michael Saylor says, we try to evaluate all options. We keep our options open and we ask ourselves the question, is this prudent? And then also, is this accretive? Is this going to be good for our shareholders? And of course, with any discussion of leverage, we don't want too much. We want to just pick just the right amount of leverage and leverage that allows us to benefit our shareholders without creating undue uncertainty. Sometimes it's appropriate to go fast. Sometimes it's appropriate to go slow. Sometimes it's appropriate to do nothing and wait for better opportunities to present themselves. The nice thing about our situation right now is that we have all these options. And we believe we're structured very, very well to take advantage of opportunities as they present themselves in the Bitcoin era of institutional adoption that we see over the next coming 15 years. Michael Saylor, my friends, playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers. And I just love how whenever he talks, he's always talking about benefiting the shareholders. That's you, that's me, the shareholders of MicroStrategy. This is who he's working for. This is who he's trying to benefit the most. Thank you, Michael Saylor. Let's talk about becoming a global Bitcoin bank. MicroStrategy is poised to become a global Bitcoin bank. As the largest corporate holder of Bitcoin, MicroStrategy can leverage its holdings to offer financial services like loans, custody, and investment products backed by Bitcoin. As a shareholder, I cannot wait to see what Michael Saylor comes up with in the future. That's part of why I'm such an excited investor in MicroStrategy, because I know that Michael Saylor has my best interest at heart as a shareholder and that he has unbelievable, exciting things planned in the future. Let's talk about becoming a global Bitcoin bank. Michael Saylor says the end game is to be the leading Bitcoin bank or merchant bank, or you could call it a Bitcoin finance company. He also says the key idea is that one company can be the leading Bitcoin bank. To be that company, you need to be 150% Bitcoin. And my friends, nobody is 150% Bitcoin except for MicroStrategy. The bigger companies can't do it for reasons we've already talked about. That's not their core competency. They can't do a pure play. And the smaller companies, they might try, but they can't catch up. MicroStrategy has way too much of a head start over 4 years, and they're just ramping up to the next level. This is what a MicroStrategy Bitcoin bank might feature: custody, lending and borrowing, institutional banking, treasury management, insurance coverage. You can see the descriptions there, but there's so many opportunities. The sky is the limit. Poised to dominate the fixed income market. Michael Saylor has stated that he wants MicroStrategy to become the Amazon of fixed income, implying he wants the company to become the go-to platform for bond investors by leveraging its Bitcoin holdings. For context, the fixed income market is currently worth about $100 trillion. Therefore, even if MicroStrategy's software business ceased to operate, the company can continue to grow based solely on its capital markets activities using its Bitcoin treasury as collateral. Now, I want to wrap up the last few ideas that we've been talking about with another Michael Saylor video clip when he talks about MicroStrategy securities in the capital markets, the type of security, the type of investment strategies. Michael Saylor, take it away.
MicroStrategy started, just thinking we were going to hold Bitcoin on our balance sheet so we wouldn't bleed capital. Then we became opportunistic. Then we became strategic. And somewhere along the way, we realized that the capital markets around the world will benefit and are undergoing a digital transformation. Um, we are able to create and issue securities that provide everybody with the right amount of Bitcoin performance and volatility in the security that they need. And so, and we can do it because we have this Bitcoin backed reserve and Bitcoin treasury operation. So, if you think about our equity, what kind of investor would buy it? Well, someone that buys Magnificent Seven stocks, a Bitcoin investor, a Bitcoin maximalist that likes Bitcoin might buy our equity because they want more Bitcoin. Options traders, they don't directly buy our equity, but the options traders trade the options, which then end up getting hedged into our equity. So the options are built on the equity. So indirectly, they're using the equity. And then any other kind of derivative, like the MSTUs or MSTXs or MSTYs I referred to. So we're actually digitally transforming those markets. The reason MicroStrategy equity is exploding in trading volume is because the market likes a security backed by digital capital. The reason that the options markets are exploding in open interest is the market likes to trade something backed by digital capital, right? If we look at another set of investors, there's equity indexes. They buy they buy QQQ or SPY. There's hedge funds, there's arbitrageurs, there's alternative investors. They're looking for something which is not correlated to traditional risk assets, and maybe they want it for capital gain. And when we sell a convertible bond, we're actually offering somebody something that has downside protection. It's not correlated to their other portfolio. Maybe they get some Bitcoin upside. It's a different thing for a different type of investor, but these are large markets. And, just like, the 15 of the 20 most successful ETFs this year, they're Bitcoin or MicroStrategy backed ETFs, right? Well, what's going on there? The market's telling you that they love the vol, they love the performance, and they love the idea of, I mean, who wouldn't love the idea of a big tech global network that feels like Google or Apple, but 10 years early, but isn't attached to a company, right? Like it's the big tech monetary network, a different thing. So there are certain investors that won't like the equity because they just don't like the volatility and they don't like the risk, but they'll like, sort of a part equity, part bond instrument like our converts. Then there's a third class of investors, the ones that buy preferred stock or high yield or private credit or real estate or hedge funds or alternatives. And it's not a market that we've served before. And as I said, we don't have any particular announcement right now, but it occurs to us that we're in an ideal position as a Bitcoin treasury company to take this Bitcoin high performance, high volatility capital and then strip a dividend out of it or strip away some of the volatility and performance and provide people with a Bitcoin with guardrails or Bitcoin with downside protection or Bitcoin low volatility, maybe with some kind of dividend of sorts. And of course, the last market here is the very conventional market. They buy corporate debt, they buy real estate, they buy mortgage-backed securities, they buy structured products, they buy preferred stocks, and they're looking for like a fixed coupon. And like we've generated fixed coupons. We just had a $500 million note, and it was paying 6.25% interest, and it was like 5, 10x over collateralized. It was like the most secure thing in the world. It was in $500 million, at the base of a 25, $30 billion tower of other assets. So I don't think we minded so much paying the 6%. What we minded was we didn't want the EBITDA covenants, the liens, all of the other prohibitions, all of the other encumbrances, and we didn't want to have all our Bitcoin encumbered. Um, if, but I could imagine under other circumstances that we'd be happy to pay, a coupon that's compelling if we found the right security. So you can see MicroStrategies. I think we're transforming and expanding all the markets we enter. We're the first company that ever did a convertible bond one week and another one the next week. And as Andrew said, we're the most common issuer, the biggest issuer this year in terms of frequency. So we think that Bitcoin is actually providing and revitalizing, injecting performance into options, into equity, into convertible bonds. We think it'll expand the markets. We think we can expand all these markets. We think ultimately it's going to be good for investors. It's going to be good for our common stock shareholders. There's really nobody's really losing because as I've said before, it's like Bitcoin's giving us 50 vol, 50 ARR, and the world's full of people that would be delighted to take 20 vol, 20 ARR. And if we gave it to them over a long enough time frame, it looks like it's like a 60% BTC spread product where $100 million of capital results in $60 million, of BTC gains for our shareholders. And it still results in a very compelling instrument that's very easy to understand for a new class of investors. So we're excited about the opportunities, and we've got a 3-year plan. As I said, don't have a crystal ball. I don't know where we'll go with this, but over the next 3 years, we'll explore this mix and we'll find the right combination for the capital markets, for Bitcoin, and for our common stock shareholders.
All right, my friends, I hope you enjoyed this explanation of Michael Saylor, how he breaks down the type of security and the type of investment strategies. Let's give a little Michael Saylor quote. We're building up a massive digital capital base that we can then lever that will support our equity, our options, our derivatives, and all the fixed income instruments we issue. I mean, how can you not get excited about this vision? Why MicroStrategy is likely a monopoly. There are very few companies that have the capital or financial leverage required to purchase such a large amount of Bitcoin. Of the companies that do have the capital or financial leverage required, they don't have CEOs with the understanding, passion, and commitment exemplified by Michael Saylor required to aggressively and successfully pursue a Bitcoin strategy. Of the companies that do have the capital or financial leverage and do have the CEOs with the understanding, passion, and commitment required, they don't have the ownership structure that would allow the CEO to unilaterally pursue a Bitcoin strategy without broader shareholder approval, unlike MicroStrategy and Michael Saylor, who holds over 50% voting rights. Even if all the aforementioned criteria is satisfied and another corporate entity does attempt to surpass MicroStrategy's Bitcoin holding, their demand would drive up the price of Bitcoin, which, as a byproduct, would increase the market cap of MicroStrategy and provide an opportunity to raise even more capital and further increase its Bitcoin holdings. Smaller companies are behind and cannot scale the Bitcoin strategy the way that MicroStrategy can, while larger companies have a core business and cannot offer pure play Bitcoin exposure the way MicroStrategy can. Bitcoin's volatility deters most corporations because it introduces financial unpredictability, complicating cash flow management and risk assessments. You can see, my friends, why MicroStrategy has such a head start, such a lead, and why they're not going to give it up. Let's talk about index inclusion. The more indexes that MicroStrategy is added to, the more passive flows it attracts, forcing indexes to purchase shares regardless of the price. The more passive flows MicroStrategy attracts, the higher its share price, the more capital it can raise, the more Bitcoin it can buy, and the more the price of Bitcoin increases, and the bigger its market cap, the bigger the weighting in indexes, the more passive flows it attracts, creating this flywheel effect. It's such a thing of beauty. And we're going to get to see this play out over 2025. The NASDAQ 100, the QQQ, that was a big step. The S&P 500 will be a giant leap. Now, here's the criteria to be added to the S&P 500. I think you can see everything is checked. 2025, here we come. Let's go. Let's hope. And I think it's possible that this could happen. It'd be so big. Let's talk about adoption of the new FASB rules. Before the Financial Accounting Standards Board, FASB, rules changed, MicroStrategy had to report its Bitcoin holdings at their lowest value each quarter, reflecting any decreases in value, but not increases. I mean, can you believe that? After the FASB rule change on 12/15/2024, MicroStrategy can now report its Bitcoin holdings at their fair value, the value of its holdings at the time of each quarter's reporting, as it should be. And this is going to be amazing for MicroStrategy's earnings report. This will positively impact MicroStrategy's net asset value, their NAV, the NAV multiple, driving its stock price up, potentially and hopefully. Additionally, the longer they delay in adopting FASB rules, the bigger the market cap of MicroStrategy, the bigger the weighting in indexes, and therefore the bigger the passive investment. Let's go. Bear market protection. Some people believe that MicroStrategy can protect itself and Bitcoin from a bear market, but this is overly optimistic because it ignores two things: investor psychology and global liquidity. Firstly, fear and greed will always drive irrational behavior that leads to overcorrections in both bull and bear markets. It's human nature, my friends. MicroStrategy traded below its NAV during the 2022 bear markets. In late 2024, 30 to 40% of MicroStrategy shares were owned by retail investors, those who are most vulnerable to emotional decision making and panic selling. Other bear market predictions: global liquidity drives asset prices. For context, global liquidity has a 97% correlation with the NDX and an 85% correlation with Bitcoin. Bitcoin is also one of the most liquid assets, hence why it is so sensitive to moves in global liquidity. Historically, for every 10% move in global liquidity, Bitcoin has moved by 45%. Thus, a fall in global liquidity during a bear market will mean a relative fall in the price of both Bitcoin and MicroStrategy. So while MicroStrategy may dampen a bear market to some degree, expecting it to prevent one is entirely misguided, in my opinion, unless, of course, we get hyper Bitcoinization. It's always possible. Nation states are coming. Game theory has been activated, my friends. It's happening. Let's talk about some main risks. Bitcoin extinction. If Bitcoin fails or suffers an existential collapse, MicroStrategy fails. They're tied. They're tied together. So this is just a reality. Prolonged bear market caused by crisis sends Bitcoin down 80%. Not only would Bitcoin have to drop 80%, but it would have to stay around 16,000 for years for there to be any issue, which we know is possible, but unlikely to be at 16,000 for years. But, who knows? Leverage risk. If MicroStrategy becomes over leveraged, it risks financial instability, which could lead to forced asset sales, dilution of shares, or difficulty meeting debt obligation. That's why Michael Saylor is so focused on the 25%. He's focused on that. Operational risk, the potential loss of his Bitcoin due to security breaches, custodial failures, or regulatory seizure. I mean, I'm sure that Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy in general are doing everything they can to limit these risks, but these risks do exist. Some other main risks: regulatory risk, changing laws around Bitcoin that could adversely impact the Bitcoin industry more generally and MicroStrategy specifically. Volatility risk, MicroStrategy stock must remain volatile enough to attract convertible bond buyers while ensuring that there is sufficient demand from these buyers to issue bonds at scale. And then counterparty risk, MicroStrategy's reliance on debt financing and external capital markets to sustain its Bitcoin strategy. If lenders or markets lose confidence or restrict access to capital, MicroStrategy may struggle to continue growing its Bitcoin holdings. Of course, it'll still have its massive Bitcoin holdings, but it won't be able to grow. And we know Michael Saylor wants to grow. That's why I put him in the Godzilla suit, because he would be very angry if that happens. Other main risks: Executive Order 6102. I talked about this very briefly, or at least I mentioned it at the beginning of this presentation. This is the possibility that the government could enact a policy similar to Executive Order 6102, which banned gold hoarding during the Great Depression as a result of the financial crisis. This would enable governments to either restrict or seize MicroStrategy's Bitcoin holdings. Wow, that would be horrible. Key man risk: the potential loss of leadership of Michael Saylor. This is a risk. He's actually addressed it before because he surrounded himself on his board, in his company, with people that have the same vision and belief as him. And so if something happened to Michael Saylor, one would have to believe they would keep executing on his plan, because why wouldn't they? It's just working. Let's talk about some facts. One category of investors buys the bonds for Bitcoin upside without the downside. Fact. Another category of investors engages in convertible arbitrage, profiting from risk-free premiums by shorting the stock. Fact. Insurance companies that buy Bitcoin directly face write-downs, which decrease reserve ratios. Fact. Insurance companies that buy Bitcoin indirectly through MicroStrategy convertible bonds face no write-downs, which maintains reserve ratios while still benefiting from Bitcoin's potential upside. Fact. You can either buy raw or wrapped Bitcoin. MicroStrategy is for investors who want wrapped Bitcoin. Fact. Convertible bond is priced based on its own interest rate, creditworthiness, underlying stock price, and volatility of the stock. Fact. Once you see what MicroStrategy is doing, my friends, you just can't unsee it. I mean, this is just what I call stacking the cool. Let's talk about some FAQs, some frequently amplified qualms. Qualm number one: MicroStrategy is a Ponzi. The reality is MicroStrategy is a leveraged Bitcoin holding company. The same way real estate investors leverage debt to increase their real estate holdings, MicroStrategy leverages debt to increase its Bitcoin holdings. I would call it an economy, says Michael Saylor. Qualm: MicroStrategy is a scam. MicroStrategy captures low frequency analog energy, fiat, that is decreasing in value and transmutes it into high frequency digital energy, Bitcoin, that is increasing in value. In doing so, it is accelerating the global transition to a Bitcoin standard. Qualm: MicroStrategy is a closed-end fund. You might as well just buy the Bitcoin ETF. Well, okay. Through its ability to intellectually leverage capital markets and accretive dilution, MicroStrategy offers investors amplified exposure to Bitcoin for every unit of currency invested by actively increasing its Bitcoin per share, the BTS, that Bitcoin yields. MicroStrategy offers other additional benefits compared to an ETF. And there's a lot of benefits we've talked about today. Qualm: you should just buy Bitcoin. Well, there are no rules. Everyone is optimizing for different goals. People who are optimizing for self-sovereignty, they buy Bitcoin. That's great. People who are optimizing for ROI buy MicroStrategy, or a mix of both, as I do. I have a mix of both. Both assets come with pros and cons. Everything is a trade-off. Qualm: the software business is trash. Well, MicroStrategy is not dependent on the success of its software business to pursue its Bitcoin strategy. Thus, MicroStrategy's borrowing capacity is not constrained by the earnings capacity of its software business. There are no bond covenants requiring interest payments to come from operating cash flows. MicroStrategy can finance its interest costs through either debt or equity without selling a single Bitcoin. Quam, Saylor has been selling shares. Saylor sold shares between February 1st, 2024 and April 26, 2024, which were granted him in 2014 as part of his compensation package. Had he not exercised those options, they would have expired worthless. Since 2014, at his own request, Saylor has been on a $1 salary and has opted not to receive any cash bonuses. From everything that I've ever seen, what Michael Saylor cares about is growing MicroStrategy into the most powerful company that he is capable of growing it into. That's what he cares about. Quam, MicroStrategy will get liquidated. MicroStrategy's debt is not structured like traditional margin loan, where assets risk liquidation if the collateral value drops below a certain threshold. Instead, MicroStrategy uses fixed rates, low or zero interest, long-term, unsecured convertible debt, giving it ample time and flexibility to manage its obligations and navigate inevitable market fluctuations. In an extreme scenario where Bitcoin drops dramatically for a prolonged period, we talked about 16,000 for years, and MicroStrategy is forced to repay the convertible bond because it hasn't hit its conversion price, the debt would be equitized. While dilutive to existing shareholders, this outcome avoids default and liquidation of Bitcoin holdings. All right, let's get to a conclusion. And these are opinions only, my friends. In my opinion, MicroStrategy identified a massive opportunity exchanging fiat for Bitcoin super early, and they are deploying every lever they intelligently can to become the Bitcoin treasury company of the world. They have attained an unassailable position. No one can catch them, and the moat around their business is unpassable, in my opinion. Michael Saylor will continue to execute on his plan until MicroStrategy becomes one of the most valuable companies in the world, possibly number one, given enough time, in my opinion. I hope you truly enjoyed this presentation, and nothing in here is financial advice, only my thoughts and opinions and the opinions of the others that I referenced at the beginning of this presentation. We are entering an unprecedented time, as one always is who is living in that present moment. And I am personally grateful that I have found Michael Saylor and MicroStrategy to help preserve and increase my capital over time. That is what I believe. That is my vision. That is my belief. That is my hope. MicroStrategy and Bitcoin are risky investments, and I would only ever personally invest money I can afford to lose. So please consult a financial advisor before you make any financial decisions. All right, my friends, we have made it to the end of the presentation. I hope you enjoyed the complete-ish history of MicroStrategy. We learned a lot today. We talked about a lot. We had a lot of Michael Saylor value bombs being dropped. And if you like this type of content, I have a show, as you can see right here on this page, called MicroStrategy Today. It's the only daily show that gives you updates, intel, insights of MicroStrategy literally 7 days a week. Nothing in that show is financial advice, just like nothing in this presentation is financial advice. Do your own research, but I would love if you checked out MicroStrategy Today. It's a passion project of mine, and I really hope you check it out and enjoy it. And of course, my other passion project is Entrepreneurs on Fire, which is a daily podcast where I interview the world's most successful entrepreneurs, literally 7 days a week for 12 years now, for 4,500 episodes. There's a lot of great content there and a lot more coming. So if that sounds interesting, just check out Entrepreneurs on Fire in your podcasting app or search my name, John Lee Dumas. And I do want to give a big thank you to our sponsor of this video, which is NordVPN. If you're interested in protecting your online identity, your family's online identity, I've been using NordVPN for a very long time. It's super easy. It's incredibly affordable. It's just a few dollars a month. Check out the link in the show notes below, and that will help support this channel, this video that did take a lot of time to compile, I will say. So thank you in advance for your support. I love comments. I love likes, and I definitely appreciate subscribers as well. And again, on this channel, you'll get MicroStrategy Today as well, which is a daily show about MicroStrategy. And I'm also going to be producing these master MicroStrategy videos like the one that you're seeing now, which is a deep dive into a more evergreen topic around MicroStrategy. So please remember, as we close this down, as Michael Saylor says, there is no second best.